Ned Hanlon from New Lambton was watching West vs Curry in the local league grand final yesterday afternoon. As the game reached its climax, Ned had a heart attack. He survived because two spectators in the crowd performed the life-giving procedure, CPR.
I think I was terrible lucky there was someone there that knew what they was doing.
Ambulance paramedics today praised the efforts of the two people who kept Mr Hanlon alive until they arrived with their heart starter equipment.
That was enabling them to supply his brain and his heart and his lungs with a good supply of blood and oxygen, and keeping him going just until the ambulance arrived there so we could deliver the electric shock to his heart to restart his heart.
Ned Hanlon was recovering in the John Hunter Hospital today. He is well enough to watch the replay, but is not sure if he wants to.
Not much at all because my team got beat.
Even though history will record Curry as the victors, Ned Hanlon believes he was the real winner at the local league grand final this year. Jane Anderson, NBN News. The BOC race is perhaps the most challenging yachting event on the boating calendar. Each entrant months sailing around the world alone in often dangerous conditions.
Just the challenge of it really, I think, and the fact that I love being out there.
30-year-old Alan Neighbour hopes to take part in the 1994 event, sailing a yacht that would be called Newcastle Australia. Today, a fundraising event was launched at the city's town hall. It's called the world's biggest paper boat race. It's hoped that through the sale of these miniature yachts, $200,000 will be raised in the next month. The Lord Mayor is the patron of Alan Neighbour's challenge.
Simply because it's such a good promotion for the city of Newcastle.
Everyone's being encouraged to buy the paper yachts so that Newcastle will have its own boat in the BOC Challenge. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
Meteorologists believe the winds off Newcastle are very similar to the gusts the America's Cup will be sailed in off San Diego in 1995. But it won't be the first time 12-metre yachts will have cut their way through local waters. In 1985, the Kookaburra Syndicate spent time in for their challenge the following year. The public response was enormous, and the John Bertrand-led team hopes to once again fall back on that support.
They need a place where people get on with the job, and they'll find that in Newcastle.
Newcastle has ready-made facilities. The former State dockyard site has a deep water pier, dry dock and an undercover complex. The City Centre Committee says the only downside is enough accommodation to house at least 60 staff together. Local hotels have already offered $700,000 in support, but it would mean the team would be split up, a problem they say can be easily solved.
I think we need to do something like the Melbourne people did for the 1956 games. Set up a little village, give them the privacy they need, but the whole of Newcastle will be aware that they're there and give them the moral support to get on with the job.
It's hoped Council will give approval for the Honeysuckle area to be transformed into a mobile home village. But Australia might not be the only team to set up here.
Well, it's possible that certainly that other teams, New Zealand for instance, may well come to Newcastle for trials, and we're hopeful that some other countries will find good reason to come and compete with Australia 1 in Newcastle.
The bid must be finished by this Friday, with the syndicate announcing its decision by the end of October. Darren Curtis, NBN News.
Art Express is a collection of art completed by more than 100 students during their final year at high school. The exhibition on show at Newcastle Region Art Gallery includes work by 9 Hunter Valley students. 18-year-old Stuart Kaiser from Belmont painted the racing game. The subject was inspired by his family's involvement in racing. It reflects Stuart's disenchantment with the industry.
There's too much money involved and the honesty's gone out of the game.
This promising art student will pursue a university career in, of all things, maths.
Very undecided on what to do, and now I know that art can be a sideline for me. I can go into that further if I like. I never really had the confidence, but this has boosted my confidence now at no end.
Other Hunter artwork includes this painting entitled Van Gogh, Raymond Terrace. It was painted by Elizabeth Hickling from St Francis Xavier College. It combines copies of some of Van Gogh's most famous works with images of the Hunter. The exhibition opens tonight and will be on display until September 26. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
It's a film that's already grossed $400 million after opening 2 months in the USA, taking over the record set by E.T. and Star Wars. After nearly a year of saturation promotion here in Australia, it'll be shown to packed houses tomorrow. Some cinemas have got right into the spirit. Distributors are holding a national competition to decide the best foyer recreation of the prehistoric adventure park. And the fever has spread. Something for the sportsman. And of course the endless stream of merchandise predicted to soar into hundreds of millions of dollars. Merchandise may be pitched at the younger audience, but the film's PG rating recommends parents accompany children under the age of 15. Even filmmakers have warned very young children to stay away.
It's scary in parts, and the dinosaurs do take over the park and try to break out of the park. So yes, children under 8, maybe not.
Dominic Bagnato returned from a 3-month stint at sea yesterday to the news that the long-awaited gemfish season had been postponed again.
We've been away, myself and all the fishermen on the coast, we've been away for 5 months, and the government in one day they've done a new plans, a new law. The government promised one thing and do something else.
5 months ago, the government restricted the amount of gemfish caught by fishermen in coastal waters, fearing they would become extinct. Yesterday, the restrictions were to be lifted and the season declared open, but an emergency meeting in Canberra extended them another month.
We got no way out. We got to go broke. I'm not allowed to bring you enough amount to cover for my fuel, for my spends, and the rest I got to chuck on water to floating. So what sort of law is that?
Migrating like birds, gemfish travel along the continental shelf in winter, gradually making their way north. By the time the government gives the green light on the season, fishermen believe it may be too late.
It's nothing left. It's nothing left. The gemfish we catch till September, the late September, middle September, the late. They stay in May, so it's nothing left.
Dominic believes the constant delay could send him and many other fishermen broke.
How we got to make a living? How the deckhands go survive? They've been working with me 3 months hard day and night. Then I make for the same amount of dole pie.
David Woods played with the Newcastle Knights in 1991. He was dropped at the end of that year. The court heard that he had met with Knights officials in May 91 to arrange a contract for the following season. In a previous hearing, Woods said he thought he was signed, sealed and delivered, but admitted he hadn't actually put his signature to paper. Former Knights Chief Executive Mike Armstrong confirmed he had offered Woods a contract, but said it had to be ratified by the board. Today, Magistrate Richard Wakely said there was some would be paid for the next season. In his up, the magistrate said he couldn't be satisfied the parties had come to a conclusion of their terms. Magistrate Wakely ordered Woods, who was on a plane to play league in England, to pay $3,295 in costs to the Knights. He had been suing for $37,000 in loss of contract. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
When Robert Gray started his new job this week, he returned home. Mr Gray grew up at Fennells Bay and left the city to further his career with Wollongong Council. Now a long-term goal has been fulfilled and he's back running the city of Lake Macquarie after the retirement of Town Clerk John Rankin. Mr Gray is aware that the last 12 months have been a turbulent time for the city, but now it's full steam ahead with a new mayor and a new general manager.
It's a matter of working with the people in the organisation to let them know that there is a new era in the city now, that we are going to achieve, that the community is going to be surprised by the level of service that they get.
High on his agenda is talking to unions and improving the city's parks and gardens. Ideally, he'd like to see a landscape architect appointed.
I've got some fairly strong visions as to the sort of environment that I would like to see created in the city of Lake Macquarie to provide a parkland quality that our community will be very happy with and the visitors of our city will be sort of flocking to see.
Mr Gray believes growing up in the area has given him an advantage.
I'm sure that I've got the passion to, because it is my home, to make a difference.
Jodie McKay, NBN News.
Community Aid Abroad and Freedom from Hunger merged this year. It's now the largest international aid agency in the country, with donations going to 400 community-based projects in 30 countries. Money from this year's door knock appeal will be given to 3 areas: people in war-ravaged Mozambique, women in India and Aboriginal Australians living in poverty.
Out of all our 400 projects, they would be of the greatest need, and the money would be spent most efficiently in those projects for the current year.
The door knock appeal was today endorsed by Bishop Roger Hurft. He had first-hand experience of the work done by Community Aid Abroad while he was growing up in Sri Lanka. He believes the organisation does an excellent job.
Raises the questions about how do we get people out of the cycle, not just by throwing aid at them, getting them involved with us in getting out of the circle of dependence.
Bishop Hurft realises that many Australians are finding it difficult financially, but he's urged the community to give what they can to those whose need may be greater. The door knock will be held between the 5th and 12th of September. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
Gosford's Henry Kendall High and the yellow striped tops dominated the first half, Shane Wright putting them on the board in the 14th minute. With the game deadlocked for the rest of the half, some frustrated play resulted in 4 warnings. Morris Brothers took control early in the second half, Michael Galuzzo scoring the equaliser. But it was a hat-trick by the Sydney side's Michael Balut that sealed victory, one of his goals from 40 metres out. 3-1 up, the brothers maintained the pressure. With a little help from Lady Luck, they scored again in the final minute.
the trees grow and produce their fruits and things, the next stage will be to put interpretive labels on the trees and to explain to people what the Aboriginal people use these trees for.
According to the experts, our rubbish is a valuable resource that shouldn't be thrown away. Every year, Newcastle households produce tens of thousands of tonnes, most of which can be recycled. Newcastle City Council has launched a campaign to reduce the demand on our landfill space by cutting our garbage 50% before the year 2000, following in the path of other cities.
In the recent report of the Waste Authority in Sydney, it showed there was a 21% reduction in waste produced over a period of roughly a year.
Richard Connolly, former chairman of the state's Waste Management Society, was a guest speaker at the campaign's launch at City Hall last night. Recycling is an issue embraced by many, but responsibility not only rests with householders.
Industry to start taking some responsibility for their products. They produce these products and then they expect us, the community, to try and do something with them. It's time that industry took their responsibility for these products.
Each industry has been given a target to achieve by 1995 of recycling a certain proportion of their packaging. The Recycling New South Wales program works with councils and community groups so that professional and reliable and viable recycling programs are created so that we can increase our recycling rates.
Council plans to hold a community workshop on reducing waste later this year.
Three days into spring and the season's first major fire had clouds of smoke billowing across the Pacific Highway at Munmora around 1:30 this afternoon. Zero visibility left traffic at a standstill. The blaze started in the Munmora State Recreation Area, about 1.5 kilometres back from the highway on the eastern side. South to southeast winds of up to 30 kilometres an hour fanned the fire on a 500-metre front. The blaze reached the highway within 30 minutes. Fortunately, there were no houses nearby. At one stage, firefighters thought the fire had engulfed a four-wheel drive parked in the National Park. However, they did locate it and helped get it to safety. With the winds picking up, Bush and New South Wales Fire Brigade fighters were forced to back off, having to wait for conditions to ease.
We've got to assume that this type of fire has been deliberately lit. Where it was lit, it's not just an accident. Someone's actually gone in and lit it up.
Almost 2 hours on, traffic had banked up for 5 kilometres. The blaze didn't jump the highway as some first feared. As conditions improved, officers began back.
I think the way this is burning, a few days or a couple of days after rainfall, I think it indicates what we could really be facing this summer as a fire season.
Officers had the fire under control within 3 hours. The highway was then reopened. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
Swimming is a popular pastime during the warmer months, but before you take the plunge, consider the findings of a survey by the Public Health Unit. Of the 210 public and semi-public pools in the Hunter that were tested, 100 failed to meet the required standard.
It varied quite a lot actually. I guess our main concern was for indoor and particularly spa pools.
This pool at Lingard Hospital passed the test with flying colours. However, many council-run pools and those included in private sporting complexes didn't. Dr Stevenson says unless pool operators improve water quality, swimmers will catch infections. Recent changes to the law allow public health inspectors to close a pool immediately if it doesn't meet the required standard.
We don't think we will need to do that. We think it's a matter of warning operators that a particular pool has an unsatisfactory result when we test it.
For Dorrigo's Stan Cork, 34 years in the service came to an end. He sees championships like these as an important part of being a firefighter.
It's becoming a young man's job, and the brigade work now entails a lot more than it did 10, 15, 20 years ago.
And as to Stan's memories of the service...
Excellent. It's something I've really enjoyed.
The Assembly Hall at Merriweather High School was packed with proud parents and their sporting offspring. Also, one of the Hunter's most successful sportspeople, Mark Sargent, was among the faces in the crowd. NBN sports presenter Mike Rabbit was one of the special guests at the event and held a discussion with 4 of the Academy's top students. Basketballer Ben Melmoth, wave skier Lisa Ryan, tennis star Sonia Brockington and cricketer Todd Campbell.
These are a tremendous performance as far as wave skiing is concerned this year. Again, that junior development here in a sport that's probably fledgling as far as women are concerned, but it's something that you've been able to achieve, the ultimate in the world title.
More than 100 members of the Hunter Academy of Sport were in attendance, coming from the 12 talent development squads. The squads each have their own coaches who give the young stars specialised training in a range of sports. Some of the sports categories include athletics, rugby union, surfing, netball and cricket. The night was their chance to get a pat on the back, each of them receiving a certificate for the hard work they put into their chosen sport. Jason Neuenhoff, NBN News. Organisers may now have to consider changing the title to the Matara Prince quest after 32-year-old David Widders was accepted as an entrant. He entered after a recent story on NBN when organiser Andrea Varga appealed for more entrants, either from women or men. David Widders saw his chance.
With the guy that was up at Brisbane entering the quest up there and he won, I thought, well, why not take the plunge here?
The man in Queensland who David is referring to is 23-year-old Damien Taylor, who earlier this year grabbed the attention of the world media when he won the Brisbane Miss Wintersun quest. David Widders is also aiming to become the Matara Princess, or should it be Prince? But if he's unsuccessful, he will be happy to have been brave enough to join the quest and raise money for the Smith family.
Mayor of Lake Macquarie, John Kilpatrick, was speaking to the Newcastle Business Club today, and one topic he freely talked about was Greenpoint. Last night, Labor councillor Jill Hall called for silence on the issue. She wants councillors and senior staff stop from saying anything contrary to council policy. However, Councillor Kilpatrick refused to comply. The Mayor believes Council must compromise with developer Jeff McCloy and agree on a mix of residential and foreshore land because he says Council cannot afford to buy the land. And it's an idea Mr McCloy is keen to pursue. Today he showed Council department heads and its new General Manager Robert Gray over the site between Valentine and Belmont. The Mayor believes councillors should also see the site before making any decision.
The kitchen at the Royal will prepare meals for at least 5 hospitals in the region. The Walls End campus will be the first to receive deliveries, followed by Dudley, Belmont, James Fletcher and early next year Morisset Hospital. The Mater and the John Hunter are still negotiating with the Royal about whether it will do the catering for them too. Once the food is cooked at the Royal, it'll be chilled and transported in refrigerated trucks to the other hospitals, where it'll be reheated.
Well, the system that we're using, which is called cook-chill system, can guarantee that for a period of up to 5 days, the quality can be maintained to a very high standard.
At the moment, chefs at the Royal cook about 450 meals per day. That number will jump to about 5,000 meals when the new system's in place. The overhaul will have ramifications for workers in other kitchens. They'll be found different jobs within the health service.
So what is clear is that no individual staff members will be losing their jobs.
General Manager of the Royal, Peter Gibson, estimates that about $1 million will be saved by making the Royal the central kitchen for hospitals in the area.
The National Association for Prevention of Child Abuse and Neglect is out to reach people in their homes and urge neighbours to help one another. Many shared a picnic atmosphere while learning of some community service groups and care networks. NATCAN's message is that children are people too, worthy of respect and learning by example. Special guest was Angry Anderson and his own family.
Help people, help neighbours if there's problems with their children, help them in a nice way, not an interfering way, but try and alleviate people's stress.
Agricultural Minister Ian Causley gave details of the Expo while visiting the Maitland cattle sales. The Expo will be held on September 28 and 29 at Tokal Agricultural College at Paterson in the Hunter Valley. $160 million is spent each year on agricultural research and passing that information on to the farming community. Minister Causley hopes the forthcoming Expo will be an opportunity for farmers to find out about the latest research and technology in the dairy industry.
If you can get a group of farmers together and tell them what you've been doing, what you've achieved, what you've found out and how that can affect their production, I think that's very important so you can pass that information on.
The Minister also pointed out what was in the recent state budget for farmers. The government is getting behind an initiative to eradicate enzootic bovine leukosis. EBL, as it's known, is harmless to humans, but its presence in cattle restricts sales both interstate and overseas.
It's a combined operation with the Department of Agriculture and the industry to try and eliminate the disease within the industry, within the herds.
The state government will also continue to support Project 20, a scheme aimed at improving the profitability of dairy herds by 20%. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
The two sides had barely hit the turf when Steve Crowe was flat on his back. Crowe was hit with a swinging arm. The league today refused to take any action, and the Knights don't want the hassle of taking players to Sydney to cite the North's forward. 2 tackles later and captain Max Chapman was destined for an early shower. He sustained serious knee cartilage damage, but despite the pain will play again next week. The loss of 2 important players shot holes in their game plan and left the side rattled. Norths often found the Knights bunched up and made full use of the gaps. The second half was an enormous turnaround. Tony Kemp's passes finally found their mark and the Knights were rapidly closing a 20-point gap. The young Bears knew the clock would be their only saviour, but Steve Crowe didn't want to see any time wasted. They finished at 4 tries apiece, a penalty goal the only difference. Coach Robert Finch was pleased with his team's recovery powers, but stresses it will be a vastly improved first half next weekend against Canterbury.
Of this one Sid Caves Beach precinct. No, I don't want it to look a selfish matter at all.
Oh, I want. Do you know the area at all? Not really. Okay.
Traffic was plunged into chaos when this pile-up happened in Northcott Drive, Katara, outside Garden City Shopping Centre at about 2:45.
Well, it appears that one of the vehicles was travelling down Northcott Drive and collided with the rear of a parked bus and it just pulled up there, and after it collided with the bus, ran across and collided with the other motor vehicle.
The impact of the crash trapped an 80-year-old man who was a passenger in the car which slammed into the bus. Rescue squad officers had to work for a short time to release him, but he was able to walk away from the wreckage. An 83-year-old woman driving the car suffered leg and chest injuries. A second woman injured as a result of the accident had to be treated for neck injuries. The trio taken to John Hunter Hospital in a satisfactory condition. No one on the bus was injured. Meantime, a sneezing attack has been blamed for this car ending up in the swamp at Kooragang Island. The Wickham owner has told police she started sneezing and momentarily lost sight of the road. Next moment, her vehicle was heading off the roadway. The car was successfully recovered from its watery resting point.
Bowlers from across Australia and one from New Zealand met at